Alright, welcome to episode 21, Over a Barrel. It's the colonization episode. That's a serious topic. Can't wait to see how they handle this. They really don't do a very good job. If they don't really do it at all, if we're being honest. But, bad friend points. Those are going to Applejack and Rainbow Dash again. Man, those two are just getting points and points and points. But yeah, they are quite literally the whole reason that this episode goes haywire and are really stupid and completely ruin everything. So yeah, enjoy. Wow, I forgot the train is flipping pulled by 4 stallions. That's insane. I don't doubt they could pull it or keep it going, but stopping that many tons worth of train behind them seems improbable even for earth ponies. And we open on Applejack reading a bedtime story to an apple tree on a train. Definitely one of the stranger openings to the series. We also learn in quick succession that Rarity is traveling with Applejack as Applejack is transplanting this tree, which is apparently named Bloomberg. A whole lot of plot dropped on our laps. Where are they transporting it to? Well, they're transporting it to Appaloosa, which I'm pretty sure is a pun on something. You'll tell me, or I'll just never know. For the reason they're delivering the tree Bloomberg to Appaloosa is because their cousins need it, / want it, / requested it. That's the whole reason they're on this trip. Not entirely sure why Rarity would want to travel to a dusty settler town, though she might be under the wrong impression. While I remember this episode, I don't remember all the little details like Rarity's reaction and everything, and having watched the episode now, it doesn't really make sense still. Neither does the rest of the people. Anyway, Applejack treats Bloomberg as, a baby and coddles it uncomfortably. And so we see the rest of the main 6 deciding to join Applejack on this trip. I'm still not entirely sure why they're all doing this other than for fun, I guess. There's also a lot of Apple family symbolism on the train, so it might be owned by some of the Apple family. It's a neat detail. I'm not entirely sure. Spike is also here. Thankfully, he gets to join in and isn't left behind. We learn he was up late making snacks for everyone, and then Rainbow sasses his work and he incinerates her snack. A bit of an overreaction, but also Rainbow kind of deserved it. Consequences and all that. After everyone heads to bed, Pinkie and Rainbow stay awake and annoy everyone by talking. But before that, the shadow layering on these two is terrible. It looks like something I would do. Just like taking the brush tool and paint and coloring it black. It's not shaded even slightly. And then Twilight joins the scene. So as Rainbow's complaining about having to carry the tree, maybe, and she calls it that, Pinkie is confused, so Rainbow makes a joke about Fluttershy being the tree. And the whole bit here is some nice funny jokes and gags, but we've still got other stuff to get to. That being said, I guess they were brought as extra hands for labor. I don't know. And they continue the tree gag with Fluttershy joining in saying she would like to be a tree. We know Fluttershy. We know. So Spike leaves after being annoyed by everyone, while Rarity yells at everyone to be quiet and go to bed. So they do. Spike, however, goes to Bloomberg and decides to sleep with the tree. I'm pretty sure the walking fire starter will cause no problems with the tree. I'm actually pretty sure he doesn't, and in fact, now that I've watched the episode, I am quite sure he doesn't. Still reckless, still weird. When I first watched this episode a heck of a long time ago, I genuinely thought that was going to be the plot point where, Spike destroys a tree. Nope, we're going to get colonization stuff. That's just so weird. And the group is awakened by a buffalo stampede, and we're now getting into the colonization problem. The natives are clearly unhappy with their presence and the presence of the train, and we'll obviously keep diving into this problem as the episode goes on. Also, I don't know where Applejack is. She's not with the tree and Spike, but she's also not with the other main 6, so she's just not around for probably the reason that she would stop everything that's happening. She's been plot erased so that way she can't stop the plot from happening. So yeah, that earth pony power is kind of insane, right? Fighting off a buffalo, which is mostly muscle. I mean, we can see what Maud does later on, and so I kind of get it, but I sometimes forget that it's a pony exclusive thing and that other species in the world don't have it. They either have a different magic like the Kirin, Draconiquus, or Changelings and Sea Ponies, or nothing at all like the Yaks, Griffins, Zebras, and Buffalo. There are likely more examples, but I think you get it. Rainbow is actually the one to deduce that something is wrong, which isn't a show of her intelligence, but more of a show of her incredible instinct, which is a core part of what makes her a good flyer and is a good detail. Followed by a bad detail of her flying in the train, only to immediately follow it up with her coming from the sky above instead of below. Obviously, she just left through a connecting point or a window and flew around, but why she went so high, I have no idea. This isn't a question of if she could do it. We know she's fast as heck. More so the framing of the shot and the way she had to move to do this is strange and doesn't feel like something she would do. She's way too straightforward to do something this over the top, but I guess it is kind of show-offy. I don't know. It just feels wrong. Rainbow actually loses a game of chicken, which is kind of surprising, but I suppose she's not in a fighting mood and mostly she's trying to figure out what's going on. She also has some good initiative and there's good characterization for Rainbow during this whole sequence. She usually just dives into things head on, but she's actually trying to gather info first and learn who she's dealing with. Rainbow, you can't just call a lady bulky. That's rude. Even if you give them a compliment alongside it. That being said, Rainbow complimenting another creature's speed is a very nice detail. She generally only does that to other flyers like Pegasi and stuff. And the lovely buffalo, we don't know the name of yet, does like 7 front flips over Rainbow. Damn, that's some great agility. Rainbow's gone from worried curiosity to just interested in them as an individual. It's very funny. Applejack finally shows up. No idea where she's been this whole time. Also, the buffalo have stolen Bloomberg. Oh no. And by extension, Spike. Actually, oh no. I don't think taking a tree is kidnapping kidnapping, but taking Spike definitely is, though they don't really know that. They don't know he's in there. Just notice this cool detail. There is no conductor pony. The pony to the farthest of the left in the lineup of the pole has a rope in his mouth to stop the train, which is horribly dangerous in my opinion, but hey, it works, I guess. Also, said pony with the rope has Big Mac's cutie mark for some reason, and the other three don't have one at all. And now we get to meet Applejack's cousin who prompted this whole trip, that being Brayburn, a fun design and a fun character. However, he's a bit dense and not great at listening to reason. So it's an Apple family trait, I suppose. Applejack tries to tell him about the problem, but Brayburn is more focused on the fact that Applejack, 2 seconds after getting off the train, hasn't introduced all of her friends immediately. Not even kidding. They walk off the train, he says hi, Applejack says, Brayburn, we have a problem. And he says, yeah, you haven't introduced your friends. Like, dude, she just got off the train in a hurried panic. Calm down. Oh look, it's Apple Fritter from episode 1. Remember her? I pointed her out, told her she had a memorable design. Lyra? Why are you here? And why do you have a bonnet that has different colored mane than your own natural one? And where is your horn? Anyway, Lyra 32, I guess. I've got a fast sequence of mistakes here. Ready? Pickaxe, cutie mark on the right leg. No pickaxe on the right leg. It reappears for literally 2 frames. And then there it is. It disappears again. This is literally 1 frame after the frame I just showed you. And now the pickaxe is on the left leg as it normally would be. This is just a confounding sequence of mistakes. We also get to see why Applejack brought her tree, and it's for the Appaloosa orchard. I'm assuming each of the different apple families have brought a single tree as like an offering to the orchard as part of the whole like apple family expansion. Maybe that's what the sellers are here for. Also, the apples in the tree, some of them are just squares and circles. Like they aren't even trying to make them look like apples. They just went into paint, grabbed the square tool, and then clicked it on the tree. Looks really funny. Oh right, it's mentioned in this scene that Pinkie Pie just went missing out of nowhere, which I neglected to point out back here when it first appeared, that she wasn't with them. Also, Brayburn finally listens and we saw him react like this after the buffalo were mentioned, telling us that this is likely a recurring problem. So Brayburn explains that the buffalo want all the trees to be removed and no new ones to be added. But he also says that the settler ponies don't know why, which means they haven't even bothered to try and talk it out. Also, a random weird thing is his vest jacket thing doesn't conform to his body and it looks confusing to me. Even if it's intentional, I don't like it. Anyway, Brayburn also mentions that it's not fair and he seems dejected about the whole situation, which is a weird way to feel when you think someone's trying to upend your food supply and threaten your families and children with starvation. Yes, they can just leave, but it's still a strangely tame reaction to have. And we see that Rainbow has lasting damage from her head injury she sustained by crashing during her chase with the buffalo. We also see that Pinkie actually ended up following Rainbow without anyone noticing somehow, despite the fact that they knew Rainbow went after the buffalo in the previous scene. Also, Pinkie decides to intentionally scare Rainbow with a prank, that's how Pinkie sees their relationship. They're prank buddies, even in this definitely not appropriate situation. To circle back to Rainbow's injury, she crashed into Twilight's house while attempting the sonic rainboom in that episode, which was at much higher speed than her chase with the buffalo. So why did she get damaged this time? It also doesn't become relevant. She just has a headache for most of the episode. Pinkie says, quote, "Ah, you caught me. Looks like I tricked you and didn't get away with it either." End quote. What the hell does that mean? No, seriously, that was complete nonsense. If Pinkie was trying to hide, I'd get it a little bit, but she just literally yells boo to prank Rainbow. Is this just sarcasm? Is Pinkie sassing Rainbow for no reason? What the hell, Pinkie? This is like some later season levels of nonsense they're making you do. Pinkie is completely obtuse to stealth and has a shouting match with Rainbow, resulting in them getting caught. So, Pinkie's sabotage and incompetence. We'll be seeing more of this type of crap in later seasons. This is a sneak peek, I guess. Rainbow tells Pinkie to flee while she holds them off. More loyalty from Rainbow, trying to protect her friends is always appreciated. With Pinkie being surprised or maybe confused by the comments. Not sure what is going on with her. Now Spike appears with the buffalo and tells them that prankster duo are cool, and the buffalo just accept this and move on contrary to everything we've been shown. As the show decides to show and not tell the situation, that it isn't entirely black and white, and the buffalo are not just a hostile force, simply an antagonistic one for reasons we'll get into. Spike explains that the buffalo didn't know Spike was in there, and took him by mistake, in the train car of course. But they respect dragons and thus treat him like an honored guest, which he abuses by snapping and making them do things for him. A common trend with Spike, and a lesson he learns like 3 to 5 times, is he abuses power, and he needs to be repeatedly told not to do that. A common thing for children in particular is the more power you give them, the worse they'll turn out, and that's how those arrogant man children are created. The kind that live with their parents while also treating them like servants. You know, those kind. Remember, your kids need freedom, but not power. If you want to teach them responsibility, use chores with rewards, I'd say, with the reward being an allowance of some kind. A pet can also be helpful for that, but it's more expensive and relies on a living creature, so should probably be done more carefully. Wait, why am I getting into parenting? I'm just rambling at this point. Let's get back to the episode. We finally learn our buffalo lassie's name, Little Strongheart. We don't really hear from her after this episode, hence why I didn't totally forget her name earlier and definitely didn't avoid saying it because I couldn't couldn't be bothered to look it up or correct my notes later to seem smarter than I am. And Little Strongheart explains a little bit more about the situation. The orchard the settlers have planted is directly on top of their traditional stampeding ground, hence their conflict with them. The trio meet Chief Thunderhooves, who explains that they've run a specific stampeding trail for hundreds of years, but the Appaloosans' orchard has tarnished that path. Also, Rainbow's wings being up to reflect her on guard, ready to fight attitude for this entire time she's in the camp is a really good detail. Rainbow finally gives in and steps up to help the buffalo, mainly after hearing that the Appaloosans didn't even ask permission before moving in and taking over the land from the buffalo who are already here. I could count this Lyra, and considering there's been a good number of scenes since the last time we saw her, I will. Lyra 33. Also, Applejack helping Rarity put on her saddlebags is adorable. Also, just like the CMC, they all have personalized saddlebags. Though it's just their cutie marks, it's still cute. The gag of all of them doing their heroic dash to save their friends, only for the trio to just be hanging out right next to them, is a really fun one. Fluttershy tackling Pinkie out of joy and relief that she's okay is kinda crazy, right? Since when did Fluttershy like Pinkie this much? I can understand if she did it to Rainbow, but I also understand why she didn't. She sees Rainbow as very capable, but she also didn't do it for Spike either, the little child whom she fawned over in episode 1. I literally don't think Fluttershy and Pinkie have had a conversation together outside of like group episodes. We know from episode 5, during the Pinkie and Rainbow prank fiesta, that Pinkie showed great concern for Fluttershy due to her demure demeanor. But Fluttershy being reciprocal was never shown, and the only thing shown for Pinkie is how everyone looks down on her for her wackiness. Also, Rainbow got a full episode to appreciate and get closer to Pinkie. Even Twilight was just reluctantly accepting her in episode 15, so this kind of feels out of left field. But it's also so wholesome and cute I want to explode, so I'll let it slide for now. To continue said weird trend though, Applejack's the one to comfort Spike and Twilight is the one to comfort Rainbow. It feels reversed, especially since Applejack has been doing the most boys are dumb rhetoric from earlier episodes, such as episode 3 and I think like 9. Again, glad they're so supportive and worried for one another, but the pairings are just unexpected and don't feel earned. Obviously, they spend more time together than we see, but that doesn't change the weirdly off feeling it gives. Similarly to Pinkie and Flutter not getting a lot of scenes together, Spike and Applejack mainly have negative scenes. I like seeing them all come together to care for one another, regardless of pairing, but it needs to be better set up with better character building. We need evidence that those new pairings are actually growing and not just making it a matter of fact. I'm overcomplicating this, so I'll stop for now, but like, I hope you get my idea, or my point. So, Applejack and Rainbow start having a pissing contest about the land dispute. Brayburn and Little Strongheart are very amicable to a discussion, demonstrating that they literally never spoke before, meaning that the Buffalo were just kind of initiated hostilities before the discussion began, which isn't a great look, but when the pair are told they can explain things to each other, they both get really happy about learning about one another. However, Rainbow and Applejack keep interrupting and end up blowing what was going to be an easy, respectful discussion into a massive, soon-to-be physical conflict between two factions. So, yeah, you already know because of the intro, but the two of them are getting bad friend points. Holy moly, this might be the most horrific thing any of the main six do to earn these points. I'd give them double for this, but it kind of break the system. So it comes down to, quote, we can't move the trees because there's no suitable land, end quote. And, quote, you have to move because it's not your land to tamper with, end quote. And all I'm left wondering is, why did they settle here in the first place? This seems like a terrible environment for ponies. Also, in this whole conflict, the whole food shortage threat is entirely fabricated by the actions of the settlers. They barged into a barely hospitable area, ignored the natives, or at least didn't realize they were there, and now that there's a problem, they say we need this land to live. Why did you settle in such a harsh area where your food stores and production were going to be so fragile that you're completely screwed if even the slightest thing goes wrong? On top of the fact that the land is so barren, as the show directly tells us word for word, how do they plan on expanding the town at all? It's destined to fail. Not to mention the lack of a direct water source means they'll have to rely on shipments entirely, which might be fine if it was a trade town, but we never get that kind of info. And even then, if something happens to their train or any other supply line they have, they get screwed over even more. This just seems like a horribly thought out settlement. Twilight, in another one of her famous both sides have good points, in a situation where neither side has good points, is becoming a funny yet annoying trend. The Buffalo needing to run this specific path is inane at best, but people value their tradition a lot more than me, so I'll give it a pass, I'll accept it. And the Appaloosans creating their own problem and then complaining about it is hilariously bad reasoning. No sane individual would settle in such a terrible place without something of value being in the location, unless they have nowhere else to go. And we know that Equestria has plenty of open space. There's miles upon miles of land just around Ponyville. They could have settled near the train that leads to Canterlot, if they so chose. Not to mention, they never explain why they settled here, so I have no idea if there's like a high-value mineral mine or some form of oil deposit or something. It's just bad decisions by everyone. Pinkie has an idea to sing a song. What confuses me, though, is why they put the pony sheriff in the middle of the buffalo for some reason, instead of with the other ponies. Really confusing. Pinkie is dressed as a common saloon lady performer. They go by many names, many of which are offensive by today's standards, so we'll go with a lady of the line. Also, no song review for this one because it's super short and kind of repetitive. Also, no one likes his performance, and while I don't hate it, it is kind of cringe-inducing, so I kind of get it. Of course, while I said there would be no song review, I am going to review at least 2 of her lines, because this first line is, quote, "We need to remember that we're all hoofed at the end of each leg," end quote, which, while definitely a racially charged statement, only confuses me more when she was racist towards Zecora and not Gilda, since Gilda isn't hooved and Zecora was. This will never not annoy me. The show usually does a good job of making the background somewhat active instead of a still, but for this song, I think it actually works that they use a still to convey how stunned everyone is while watching this. Also, Bonbon39 is hiding over here in the corner. And Pinkie isn't done being racist as she explains, quote, "We're all vegetarians. We all eat hay and oats," end quote. Poor Zecora, man. She did not deserve any of it. Also, yeah, she's not really being racist in this exact moment, but it's just sort of retroactively making her treatment of Zecora in the previous episodes even worse. And they were already really bad. We can see here that Sheriff Silverstar's cutie mark has 5 points on it, like his badge. But here, his leg and stomach are layered above the cutie mark, covering it. Oops. So all Pinkie Pie's performance did was convince the buffalo to smash the orchard in town with their stampede, and the Appaloosans to fight back, basically starting a war between the factions. Good job, Pinkie. Once again, a bunch of scenes have passed, so Lyra 34. They put Dr. Hooves' cutie mark on this random colt. Same color scheme too, so they probably just shrank his model. That's pretty lazy. Also, that's Amethyst Star, one of the Ponyvillians. So I guess she came to help out with the settlers too? Also, quick note, look at the cherry cutie mark on this guy. And another cherry cutie mark on a different pony. Also, this guy's eyelids aren't long enough to cover his entire eye, which is a funny animation error. And that's the 3rd cherry cutie mark. That's 3 in 16 seconds. They didn't even try. Though, once again, Cheerly is wrong about cutie marks, and I'm still laughing about that. And a 4th one for good measure a couple seconds later. Though this one is at least the same pony as before instead of 3 different ones, so it's more forgiving. The Appaloosans are harvesting like it's the end of the world, since it probably kind of is for them. But also, the apples on the tree are all red, and guess what's in the bucket? Green apples. I'm still angry. They have shown green apples on trees, but that's in areas where it is dubious if it is apple land or not. This is apple land. No green apples. Interesting. On the buffalo side, they're sharpening their horns. That's kind of morbid, no? It's for tree destroying, right? Right? Oh, hey, Spike went back with the buffalo, which is weird, but also kind of makes sense since he's on good terms with them and he can keep an eye out. Oh, hey, Rainbow did too. She wasn't in the previous scenes, I'm pretty sure, so that also tracks. Fun. This dude does not get paid enough for this. He definitely didn't sign up to fight an army of buffalo twice his size. Also, Dr. Hooves is no longer a colt, so he probably just hit himself with a shrink ray or something. Also, this bonnet has the same hair color as the bonnet that's on Lyra, so they probably just copy and pasted this lady's bonnet onto her. Just a thought. Bonbon is on the front line for a city she's not even from. Guess Rainbow's not the only loyal type. She's loyal to ponies, in general. But yeah, Bonbon 40. Just as Chief Thunder Hooves is about to call off the stampede since he doesn't truly want to destroy anything, Pinkie comes in with her song that she was directly told they all hated. And now he's decided that mass destruction and potential murder is okie dokie in his book. Pinkie sabotage is here, unfortunately. This will probably be the last Lyra I count because it's been about 3 minutes and we're in the climax. So Lyra 35. Alright, so they destroy some hay that was purposely set up to be destroyed as a trap. And the only real destruction that the buffalo cause is because of a pie blinding one of them. So it's basically the pony's fault. Chief Thunderhooves charging down Sheriff Silverstar, and my guy just accepts his death. Like, what are you doing? This is even more dark. And after the chief gets a stray pie to the face, he tastes it and decides violence is bad, and he wants more pie. Not the best conflict resolution for this episode, or just in general. Would have probably made for a better lesson to have them actually talk things out, but whatever. So they carve a path through the orchard for the buffalo to stampede through, and the buffalo also get free pies. In exchange, the Appaloosans get nothing. They're just allowed to stay. Kind of feels like a bad deal for them, but they also kind of deserve it for their own incompetence and, you know, lack of communication. Also, hey, there is a river here, so I take back that comment I made earlier about it. Also, remember Bloomberg? You know, that tree that started the entire plot? Here's his payoff. He's just a fancy apple tree placed in a fancy spot. Figured he might come into play more, but nope, we don't see him get returned to Applejack, nor an apology for him being taken in the first place. Oh yeah, the letter to Celestia. It is thus, quote, "Friendship is a wonderful and powerful thing. Even the worst of enemies can become friends. You need understanding and compromise. You have to share, you have to care," end quote. And Pinkie is mad about the plagiarism. Hilarious. As for the lesson itself, it kind of relies on the quote-unquote worst of enemies to have some form of commonality between them for any of that to happen. But for just regular folks, it works well, I guess. Like if you're just with another random person, understanding and compromise can work for a lot of people, but maybe not like worst enemies. That might be pushing it. And that was episode 21, Over a Barrel. So that was the colonization episode, tackling the complex issue of moving into an already occupied land. Definitely could have handled it a bit better. The buffalo rarely called the land theirs, which makes sense for the Native American sensibilities, that the land belonged to no one. That's what they believe. At least I'm pretty sure that's what they believe. I'm not exactly kept up on my history. Also, the Appaloosans are kind of just idiots. There wouldn't have been any conflict if it wasn't for Rainbow or Applejack, who both never apologized or admitted wrongdoing. So yeah, not a fan of how this episode ended up. It took some serious topics and didn't really deliver, all while making Pinkie, Rainbow, and Applejack's characters worse, while Twilight, Rarity, and Fluttershy didn't even really do anything. So I'm probably just gonna go with a 4 out of 10. Chief, too much wasted potential, but not insultingly bad, so I guess not much lower.